Time that Russia held the BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit so close together was back in 2009. The world was trying to climb out of a financial debt crisis at the time, and a lot has changed. Now the BRICS leaders have established a new development bank. It could start financing its first projects before the end of the year. Meanwhile, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization may expand for the first time since its establishment in 2001. India and Pakistan are set to officially join the organization by 2016. Coming up, we'll discuss the expansion of the SCO, but let's first focus on the BRICS summit. Joining me from Moscow is Victoria Panova. She is currently a faculty member of the Moscow State Institute of International Relations. And from Shanghai, we have Liu Zongyi. He's a research fellow at the Shanghai Institute for International Studies. And here in the studio is Paulo Sotero. He is the director of the Brazil Institute of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. Thanks all for joining us. Liu Zongyi in Shanghai, I want to go to you first. But first of all, let's hear from the Chinese President Xi Jinping on the way forward at the BRICS summit.
We need to build a partnership for common development for the purpose of building a value chain of shared benefits and a big market of integrated interests. We should build an even closer partnership, leverage our complementary strengths in resource endowment and industrial structures, and expand our development horizons through collective efforts.
Liu Zongyi in Shanghai, Chinese president, they're talking about mutual cooperation in the economic sphere. What does this new development bank mean for the BRICS nations?
Yes, I think for BRICS countries, for this institution, because we can find that in BRICS there are two groups of countries. One is China and India, and another is Russia, Brazil, and South Africa. For China and India, these countries, China is a world workshop and India is a world office. But for these countries, they are lack of energy and resources. And Russia, Brazil, South Africa are rich of energy and resources, so they can complement each other. And now Russia, India, and South Africa, Brazil, these countries, they would like to develop their infrastructure and their industry and their industries, but they are lack of money. But China have a lot of foreign reserves, so China can invest to these countries to develop their industries and infrastructures. And now, I think the new development bank, compared to World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, maybe the new development bank is more inclusive because the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, we would like to ask some conditions for those countries who accept their money. But the new development bank will not. And secondly, I think the new development bank is more efficient than World Bank and Asian Development Bank because the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank have a lot of bureaucracy. And also, I think the new development bank is more responsible for the developing countries because the new development bank will not ask the developing countries to adopt some kind of development model. But for World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, they would like to ask the developing country to adopt the Western development model. So they are different. Yeah, they are very different, learning from the lessons from the past, and also the voting structure is going to be a lot more democratic than some of the Western institutions here. Victoria Panova, the big headline coming out of UFA Russia with the new development bank, or used to be called the BRICS Bank, was this $100 billion fund. What's that all about, and what do you think the potential for that for the BRICS and beyond?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that when the only outcome, the biggest outcome of the summit is seen in their final launch, practical launch of NDB, BRICS Bank, and CRA, Contingency Reserve Arrangement, I would say it's a big mistake to see this as the only big outcome.
No, but it was the headline.
We already suffered. Yeah, it was a headline, and if we talk about CRA, it will be about guaranteeing each country's in case there are problems with its currency. It's a kind of a pillow, safety pillow, although it was claimed that none of the countries are going to reverse to this CRA in the near future, because none of us is experiencing such problems that might require to turn to this institution. But it's a, as I said, it's a safety pillow in case of some disturbances or turbulences. Sorry. With their BRICS Bank, I would like to say that it's also a big step forward. A lot of experts in the West try to see it as a rivalry. Well, it's not meant as a rival institution either to World Bank or any other global or Western-led institution. It's a complementary one, as well as AIIB. So it's, but I would totally agree with our Chinese colleague that this institution, the NDB, would be a more democratic structure. We'll still have to see how efficient it is, because the first projects are not to be coming in practice before, I think, April 2016. We already saw birth of it on July 7th, when the first time the board of directors and met in Moscow and discussed all practical issues. But the real projects, there is a roadmap to be set up before the end of this year, and next year we'll have financing going on. But as I said, there's much more to the outcome of the summit. Just mind economic strategy, long-term strategy for BRICS. It's very important, and it's exactly about what our Chinese colleague was talking about, enhancing mutual enhancement of the countries. Then intercultural agreement, and of course expanding and enhancing political cooperation between all the BRICS countries, which was once again demonstrated this year.
Yeah, and the roadmap for 2025. Paulo Sotero, I want to come to you in the studio, but first of all, I want to play a clip from the Vice President of the Development Bank, because although they say they're not a rival for the World Bank, they do understand there's going to be competition. Let's have a listen.
We shouldn't copy blindly what the World Bank or other regional development banks are doing. Mostly, I believe, and we will complement each other with the World Bank and other existing regional development banks. But eventually, at some point, and for some projects, there might be competition. But I think this is like a market. Competition is a good thing for everyone. That can push you to be more efficient, to be more effective, and to be more responsive to your clients.
Paul, you know, how's Brazil going to benefit out of this, and how do they see this new development bank?
I think mostly as a positive development. The commitment to form the bank was really sealed last year in Fortaleza. Now in Ufa, they really make good on that promise. Now, as Victoria said, let's see how the bank will be set up and function. They had a very first important decision in the nomination of a very able executive, financial executive from India, Mr. Kamath, to head the bank. It's a very good start. Now, let's see how the bank works in practice. I was surprised by our Chinese colleagues saying that, you know, the World Bank, for instance, is too much bureaucratic, and this bank would not be. Remember, this is a bank set up by India, China, Russia, and Brazil. We are countries famous for our inefficient bureaucracy. So let's hope that in the process of setting up this bank, we learn something also about efficiency of bureaucracies.
It's good to have the cynical view in here before we start. I think that's a good idea. The US has 16% voting rights in the IMF. It's an effective veto. But the way the BRICS Bank set up, the new development bank, as we call it now, it's very different. Do you see a new model in terms of access to financing, of fairness, for example, especially when we compare what's happening in Greece, for example, with the IMF, World Bank, and, of course, the European Union?
It is potentially more more fair deal. Again, depending on how it works, because remember, this is a bank. It will have to function as a bank. It will have to produce some sort of profits to continue to operate as a bank. It will not have the same conditionalities, but I assume it will have some conditionalities. It's not just going to distribute money. The vocation of financing infrastructure is certainly very attractive for a country like Brazil that could benefit from this and could also serve the bank, because Brazil has important companies that could provide services. So it is positive, but you know, the development bank initially will have about 5% in terms of its portfolio loans of the World Bank. So it will develop.
Still pretty small.
Pretty small. It will develop. Hopefully it will develop okay, well, and under the right leadership.
I just want to ask you one more question before we go back to Shanghai. What's your overall assessment of the BRICS summit? Because I know you can be quite cynical sometimes. And some people have said, you know, BRICS, it's great, but they're very different countries. In fact, they should more be like called the Cribs, with China and Russia on the left, India in the middle, and Brazil, where you're from, and South Africa on the right. They don't complement each other. What's your answer to that?
Well, they can complement each other, but Brazilian diplomats involved in this, it's not my cynical view. It's the reading of assessments from people that find that this sometimes to see the complementarities is quite challenging. Now, I think that it is positive in the sense that the BRICS start as a branding exercise by an investment bank. It showed it had some meaning and potential during the first phase of the reforms of World Bank and IMF, where the BRIC countries acted in concert, in cooperation, and provided and helped to move the agenda forward. Now the BRICS launch a institution, a bank. I think it's a work in progress, and I think it's welcome in that sense, but you have to evaluate as the bank builds.
Victoria Panova, you wanted to pick up on that in Moscow?
Not on the bank, but I'd like to. I really hate it when people say about Jeffrey Sachs as being their, you know, the founding father of BRICS, because that was indeed marketing exercise. But if you trace it back to the mid-90s, we had Evgeny Primakov, who just unfortunately passed away, our great strategist, who suggested this idea of multipolarity and multi-vector diplomacy, and so he suggested triangle with India and China, and then he went to Latin America right after to offer this cooperation. So this was an idea that was brewing for a long time, and BRICS is not a marketing exercise, but BRICS is rather a gathering of the countries that adhere to the idea of multipolarity, multi-civilizational cooperation, diversity, well, and UN as a central body.
I wanted just to ask for a final word here, Liu Zongyi in Shanghai. We are seeing a slowdown in the global economy. There's some debt issues. Can the BRICS Economic Organization help restore some stability?
Yes, I think now the establishment of a new development bank means that the institutionalization of BRICS, this organization. And I think the establishment of new development bank will make opportunities for the development of these BRICS countries, because the new development bank can provide money for their economic development, for their infrastructure construction, and for their industrialization. And secondly, we also established the contingent reserve agreement. This agreement can guarantee the financial stability in these countries.